What's up, family? This is Reggie with Let's Talk Shop KC podcast. As you can see, we're in a new space, and I'm just incredibly blessed that you as an audience, A, are supporting me, but B, that we have people in the community that see a worth within this conversation. Remember, we're changing the community one conversation at a time, and so I just thank you for joining us. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button, like the post. More importantly, do me a favor and share the post with other people if you believe that the content that you hear is engaging, okay? So today, who is Reggie, right? And I got a couple people here with me to not only hold me accountable to who Reggie is, but more importantly, give you a different perspective of who Reggie is. Again, right now I'm a chief with the fire department. Again, none of the things that we talk about is a direct reflection of them, but more so of my own views. But what we want to do is just be able to talk about different perspectives from growing up. And I've known these brothers, LaRon Evans, Marcellus Jackson, since we were in the 6th grade. And I just turned 40 on September 4th.
You old.
So I'm 40 years old. So we've had an amazing friendship for the last at least 25 years, which not very many people can say that. So a part of knowing who I am is knowing who these brothers is. And so what you're going to get today is authenticity. I've heard you guys talk about that some of the conversation is so polished, but I think you need to understand my background to understand why things are as polished as it is, and then to bring a different perspective as we got some educated men in here. So if y'all want to get the thing started, I just wanted to give that intro.
Sure enough. So, LaRon Evans, like he said friendship. It's been a brotherhood, 100%.
Straight up.
Who is Reggie? If you'd have asked me that question in the 6th grade, man, I would have had several thoughts because of several experiences. I know me personally, that being because we experienced so much laughter primarily together, but of course, getting to know you over the years definitely formed a good brotherhood. I'm curious though, because I do know your background, but I think in order for people to understand your background, it's always, of course, important to go back. So what I'm interested in is you being the oldest of your brothers, and you all's childhood. What was that experience like, being the oldest brother, from your earliest memories in your childhood? What was that experience as the oldest son with your moms and your brothers? What just a few things that come to mind immediately. Don't meditate too hard now.
Yeah. You know me, right?
Yeah.
I would say biggest thing is responsibility. My mom had me at 19. In turn, which is interesting, I had my kid at 19. So I can't necessarily say generational curses per se, but I will say that, and I'll stay away from that just for now so I can make sure I answer your question. But so my mom being young, she relied heavily upon her mother. Thus, that's why we lived in T.B. Watkins. It's because my grandmother lived in T.B. Watkins. So we would be over there when she would be helping my mother as my mom was trying to find her way. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, me being the oldest of 3 boys, my brother is 11 months younger than me. And then I got another brother that's 4 years younger than me. But me being the oldest of 3, it was a lot of responsibility at a young age, and responsibility that I didn't ask for. And so when you talk about growing up fast, so I would get in trouble all the time because in one capacity of my life, I was given the ability to make adult decisions as I was helping my mom pay rent, and not necessarily physically, but I'm saying instead of her husband doing something because she prioritized her kids, what I did, I would ride my bike to Habitat for Humanity. Once we moved over into the 30s, that was her first house once she got a job at the IRS and started working for the government. And so I would ride my bike to go pay rent. My boys is out there playing baseball and doing everything else, you know what I mean? But I'm having to do real life things, you know what I'm saying? So I would say if I had to categorize it in one word, I would say responsibility was the overarching of why I am the way that I am today. Hopefully that answered the question.
No, absolutely.
I heard you bring up you grew up in TB Watkins. Where exactly is TB Watkins at?
Okay, that's good. So TB Watkins is off 12th Street. And anybody that's from Kansas City understands that it's real. It's real living down there. And the biggest thing is that it's an impoverished area. So you got a lot of people that sometimes maybe have the crab in a bucket mentality where you feel like you're about to get out, but either due to all kinds of different circumstances get pulled back down into this area of just poverty, man. And not just poverty, but fatherlessness, lower socioeconomic area, the education level being lower. When you talk about all of those things, that stuff makes a huge difference in the way that people think and in the way that people behave. And so it was a step in the right direction once my mom got approved for a house, but we literally went from one project to another somewhat impoverished area. But again, not having a broad perspective, going to the 30s, I thought it was a step in the right direction. And in a lot of ways it was or whatever, but there was still areas or there was still things there, gang life, murders, all the other things that was still a part of my everyday life up until college.
So moving to the 30s, of course, you had a thought about it being a move up, but of course, there's a lot of traditional Kansas City activity that happens in the 30s. We can talk about a little bit of that more in a minute, but I'm sure your mother knew where you all were and the nature of that environment. What was her message to you being in that neighborhood? What were some of her key messages to you all as you all maneuvered in that neighborhood?
And let me just backtrack just a little bit. We speaking of my mom in the past tense because if you don't know, my mother passed away in 2018 from pancreatic cancer. And so if you suffer from that, my heart goes out to you, or cancer of any sort. But my mother's overarching message to me, actually, can I tell you a story? I feel like it encapsulated a lot better.
Yeah.
All right. My mother, being from 12th Street, the projects, I don't know if you remember, but my mom had all gold teeth, crushed diamonds, everything. I mean, I'm talking about she was a product of her environment in a lot of ways, right?
I saw pictures of that. I don't think I ever
you never
seen.
seen. Okay,
she did have an open face.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
remember open face.
so she still struggled a little bit because
yeah.
she pulled all her teeth and put in false teeth.
Okay.
But even with the false teeth, she still threw that open face gold because she was like, I gotta keep a little bit of, you know what I'm saying? And so, which I could appreciate. But what my mom was a very smart woman. She didn't finish college, right? Because of the fact that she had to prioritize us because of my father not being around. He was around, but we'll come back to that, right? And so what I will say is that her message to me is that learn from my mistakes. And then some of it's funny because now my father and I's relationship is super close, right? And one thing that he would tell us all the time is his life is 90% attitude and 10% skill. He said, I could teach you anything you want to do, but your attitude is up to you. And so I talk about my mom. My mom struggled with her attitude in a lot of ways because she's the youngest girl of, I think she got 11 brothers and sisters, right? And so being the youngest girl, I remember seeing times where my mama and my uncles was fighting. I'm not talking about like, hey, stop it, pushing. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about scrapping, like rolling down the stairs fighting. You know what I'm saying? And so having that mentality like that and then having boys, you know, she wanted us to be raised hard because of our environments, right? But then she balanced it though, because of what was interesting is that she balanced it because then she took us to a church out at 83rd and Lamar called Heartland Community Church. And in the early 90s, going out to Heartland Community Church on 83rd and Lamar, you could pretty much guess that we was probably one of the only black families there, right?
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
And so me being, again, my mom and I's relationship being a little different, so she gave me the freedom to ask her questions that maybe some traditional kids wouldn't be able to ask because of the fact that we have more of a partnership in a lot of areas because she depended on me when she was at work and other places, right? And so I asked her, I said, Mom, why in the world? Because we went from Macedonia on 24th and Benton to Heartland. I'm like, hey, why?
Culture shock.
Culture shock.
Yeah.
But she said, you may not understand this now, Reg, but you're going to understand when you get older.
So she was trying to change your view.
She was trying to change my view. And then more importantly, she was trying to teach me how to assimilate into these environments as I climb up through the ranks of not only the fire department, but even you being an engineer.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm gonna jump ahead a little bit from a
Sure.
historical or chronological standpoint, but I told you this not too long ago. She said something to me, which I think was the time of your wedding, as a matter of fact.
Which one?
Oh man, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, go ahead.
You said it. So none the one you're in now. Let me say it like that.
Right.
And so I had told her about the promotion that I had gotten at the time, and she said, "Just remember this, LaRon. There are at every new level there are new devils." And man, that stuck with me. And when I say she wasn't lying, because as I've moved forward or progressed in my career, and not even in my career, man, but really as you progress in life, as you mature in life, you don't deal with the same demons that you dealt with when you were young. You know what I'm saying?
That's good.
And so as you mature and grow, you find that there are different struggles, different things that get on your nerves or that bother you or that you struggle with or that you might go to sleep thinking about or meditating on. You know what I mean? And so that was just a profound life lesson that I remember from her, you know. And when you mentioned your view, I think that was one of those things for me at that time, which was a good right time for me to hear, was to make sure that I did have the right view or perspective about the shifts in life. So yeah,
That's good, bro. That's good. Yeah, she just struggled a lot when it comes to being in those environments. And so her exposing us to 83rd and Lamar, it wasn't saying that that environment was better than our environment. It wasn't saying that environment was what I'll say is that many African Americans or minorities struggle when it comes to being in these environments as they climb up the ranks of whatever professions that they've chosen, whether they're engineers, whether they work at the fire department, the police department, or all these other places. And so instead of her having to struggle in her mid to late 20s, she said, I'm gonna make sure that my boys will know how to assimilate a little quicker. And if you look at a lot of the pictures, or if you review some of the footage of what my everyday life is like being a chief with the department, you'll see that I was able to benefit from being exposed to different environments other than the ones that I was brought up in.
So go ahead, because you like you something was go ahead, brother.
I think also what she prepared you for, like you said, was adapting, and also I think your high school did that as well.
In what capacity? That's
Capacity of it being, I would say, a mixed crowd. It's not just primarily a black school.
That's good.
You know, we went to school with all nationalities. So right then and there, it showed you as well.
That's good. Paseo,
Paseo was still predominantly black though.
but it was different
But
though.
did have, I hear what you're saying though. It did have at least a mix of cultures. To your point, where we weren't just surrounded around just black people. We may have only hung around black people.
Yeah,
but
right.
We were not just around. And I'm remembering an earlier story too. So when I don't know if that was 6th or 7th grade, you were one of the first people I was around that had an older white gentleman around y'all. His name was
Chris Jaley. Shout out to Chris.
Yeah,
Yes,
Chris.
sir.
I'll never forget that, man.
Yeah.
So go over there. We couldn't have been no more than 12 years old at the time, and we were playing football in Central, the little yard area of Central High School. And when I don't know, maybe the second or third time I go over here it is. This white man is coming to pick up Reggie and pick up Neil, and then I'm going with him. I'm like, man, who is this dude? Like, so I would just add to that, even with that, and I don't remember what establishment or organization he was part of, but
The Hope Center.
There we go. Okay, the Hope Center. But again, just another example of what she was situating y'all around.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah.
I think you said a couple of things that I just want to bring context to. Again, shout out to Chris Jaley, but again, my mom being a single parent, raising 3 boys. And again, you got to remember that my parents were young, right? And so not only was my mom 19, but my dad, he was, I believe, her birthday's in August, hers is in January, or his is in January. So he was 20. And so when you talk about mentation, right? As a child, what's the scripture? When you're a child, you think like a child.
But when you grow up, quit thinking like, oh no, it says put away childish things, but yeah, ultimately same thing. Quit thinking like one.
But I think
if you quit thinking like one, you'll quit acting like one. Everything's governed by the mind.
And I think that's important to say that, and I know my father wouldn't mind me saying this because, again, we got a really strong relationship now. But back then, he was dealing with a lot of trauma. His brother was murdered. You get what I'm saying? And so he found solemn in, he was drinking, he was smoking. And so we seen our father on the traditional separation schedule, right? On the weekends or whatnot. But when it came to just dealing with the everydayness of life or whatever, my mom would enroll us in these programs where we seen other men. And so Chris Jaley became more of a mentor to us in the absence of my father not being in the home. And so, but again, what I think she was trying to teach us is that people are people. I've been hurt by black people. I've been hurt by white people. But the biggest thing, and I've had really amazing memories from black people and white people. And so what I'm saying is that my mom taught me at an early age that when somebody shows you who they are, believe them, despite their color. And I think a lot of people in our upbringing may struggle with that.
I think a lot of that depends on each person or each family's history that's been embedded in them. We've all learned a lot of things based on our grandparents' history and their experiences, so it's understood. On that note, though, your mother, strong woman, and you're not saying everything, but that's all good. But
hey, nothing's off the table. I promise. I want this to be
Patricia getting your dang on tail too, boy.
She was. I think you need to say that. Like my mom was. She was the youngest of 12, so she raised us hard. I thought I said that.
You did
and if
say
I
that,
and if I diminished it some, I don't want to do that
because
my mom raised us very hard, and she made sure that.
I think your mama, out of all of our mothers, was like the one that's like, nah, we can't test that over Reggie's house, like, or we not even gonna
test what?
Well,
can we speak on it?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay,
I mean, we were doing a lot of stuff at very young ages, from drinking to smoking to girls. Those 3 really are the main 3 that we experienced at a young age. And
who exposed you to that?
To which part?
to those 3 things.
Well, so the different from you, yeah. I'm the youngest boy out of my youngest brother out of my brothers.
Okay.
Middle child, older than my sisters, but being the youngest, and I primarily have to, say this about my oldest brother. He definitely exposed me to a lot of things, But we also had older cousins in Oklahoma, who exposed us to certain things as well. So when it came to smoking weed, that is, just to be clear, that was certainly my older cousins, Oklahoma, but then my brother as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, with girls, just seeing my older brother or seeing, older cousins and how they are moving around girls. Of course, when I'm, 12 years old, and well, me, it was before 12 that I was, thinking about things. But
Hey, let's jump over here real quick.
Yeah, 'cause
so you and I
influence too, but I'm gonna let
yeah.
him. Yeah.
So when and if we can't talk about it, then let me know. But I just think it's crazy that I think Ron is spot on. Hey, bro, if we walked in my mom's house with a joint or a bottle or any of that, it wasn't gonna be just punishment for me.
Yeah.
She was gonna get y'all too.
Yeah.
I remember. Hold on, let me tell you this one little story. And I say little, but my little homie Antoine. Shout out to Tweezy, man. He was supposed to be here today, but we're gonna set up another interview for him or whatever. But Antoine, he's a short in stature guy. He's probably not even 5 foot. Really good guy, my boy. But he's had some medical things that he's had to deal with, which at this point he uses a breathing machine and all these different things, right? But his attitude is amazing. So I don't want to digress from that. But his attitude is amazing. But he would walk into my mom's house and he would catch the same punishments that we would catch. She didn't.
Nobody was off limits.
Nobody was off limits, G. Nobody. Everybody was, you know what I'm saying? So, but then I meet you, and then we go over your house, and I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. I love this. Can you speak on that, Silly Sil?
Yeah, come on, Sil. We waiting.
My house was different. My mother, man, she wants everybody to enjoy themselves. I say that about my mom, y'all know that. So, and another thing is we just wouldn't get caught doing the things that we were doing.
That's true. That's true.
She did not know a lot of the things that we had going on because we had quarters away from her room, which was upstairs.
Straight up.
So we did a lot of things, there, and again, man, she never wanted to stop the fun. So, that's what that was about.
Oh man. I loved being at Sal's house, man.
What's funny though is that how it all came together. We all knew each other, but I was hanging with you a lot earlier.
Because we was in band together.
That's right.
Yep.
And then Marcellus and Corey were hanging out, and then I started hanging, and then everybody just all came together. I don't remember how old we were, but you're right though. We found ways to get away with a lot of stuff. Cause you are right. Your mama she would have got in our tail.
Yes.
Yeah. She would have gotten our tail if she'd have found out. All of our mothers would have
right.
really.
Yeah. Hey, shout out to Mama Jackson.
Yeah,
you know
absolutely.
what I'm saying?
Yeah. Shout out to Mama Jackson.
Mama Rhonda K. You know what I'm talking about? We got to shout out to our peoples.
That's
you know what I'm
mama,
saying? That's his mom's, man.
Okay. But some though. So when. Even considering that with our mothers, I can remember we were probably in the 8th grade, I believe so. I was staying with my grandparents at the time, and even though your mother instilled all that she did was hard, the way that she was, there was a moment where you were challenged with her authority or challenged about her getting on you or whatever. I don't remember all the details, and I just remember he shows up.
All right, I can talk.
House.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it. And so, again, it's one of those lines where moms gave me this. She allowed me to do certain things because of the added responsibility that I had raising or helping to raise 3 boys, right, or 2 younger brothers. You know what I mean? And then so that put me in a headspace, when you get a little, you want to take a lot, right? And so the biggest thing is that so you start growing up, you get a girlfriend. I was one of the first people driving in my grade.
Yeah, you sure
Yo,
was.
You know what I'm saying? So I mean, I wasn't stranger to responsibility, and so you start challenging the system a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I think every man at some point being raised by a woman understands to some degree that it takes a lot of humility to refrain or restrain from challenging her headship. But ultimately, I think it's super important to make sure that we're clear that most women that I know says that you can't raise a man. And so that's what was going on. I was 16, I believe, at the time. I was starting to smell myself. I was tired of helping to assist in that situation. And I wanted freedom, man. And so I showed up to Ron's house. I think I stayed there about 2 or 3 days.
2 or 3
And
days.
Mom's reached out to my pops. And she knew what she was doing. Man, my mom was she was a smart woman. She called my dad. My dad was like, hey, man, come on down here, man. You know what I'm saying? Come on down here, right? And so I went down to my pop's house, to let him know how my mom was tripping, right? And then my mom show up. I'm like, oh my God, Lord. Listen, my mom, I remember one time my brother skipped curfew and walked in the house. My mom was standing behind, and I was messy, bro. So I'm sitting here watching, fam, right?
Was you laughing?
Man, was I laughing? Come on, fam.
Was he laughing?
What, was I laughing? Man, Moms was standing behind that door, and he walked in, and she grabbed the fit and hit him so hard, busted his nose. Shout out to Neil. I know you remember that, fam. I never forget it. You know what I'm saying? And, so it just lets you know that moms, again, I pray that I'm creating a balance for you guys, because my mom had us in church on Sundays and Wednesdays. She had us involved in multiple programs, whether it's Boys and Girls Club, RBI League, and all of these different things to be able to receive mentorship. But she also made sure it was important. One thing that I can say about my mother is that despite how she may have personally felt about my father, or even my grandmother, which was his mom, she never said anything negative about him. Not to me.
Man, that's huge.
That's big.
Yeah,
That is
huge,
big.
bro.
Yeah.
She never said. And so my viewpoints that I constructed, some off balance, off kiltered in my younger ages because of the fact that I didn't understand much. It's interesting how your perspective of things shift as you get older.
100%.
You know what I'm saying? And so I may have felt a certain way about my father growing up or whatever until I became a father, and I was like,
No.
You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's important to see too, that although I asked and I reached out to my father for, I would say in some ways, an apology for not being there, there was a part of me that also reached out and said, I'm sorry for putting you through unnecessary hardships, as I didn't understand that there was always two sides to every story. And so I think having those real conversations in families is super important, because I talk to my father almost every day now. Almost every day. You know what I'm saying? And he's a big part of my life now. So shout out to Reginald McKeithen. You know what I mean? And so I think it's important to be able to talk about some of those facets of me, because essentially you got all of these microorganism things that compose who I am as a person. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you made a statement. I fully agree. I lead a study at church. We studying authentic manhood, and one of the things that it discusses is that it takes a man to call a boy into manhood. And if you research the patterns or the history of humanity, and you examine or break down what true manhood is, you will find that is the case every time. And I say that because, and you've said it too about your mother already, and I'm glad we've asked those questions so you can. We've all kind of shared something about it already, But ultimately, with all of us, at some point or another, it did take a man to call us into what manhood is. Interestingly, we were experiencing that with one another too. You know what I
That's
mean?
good.
Meaning that we were transforming from boys to men together, and I think that that's what really solidified the brotherhood that we had. That's why we've always called each other brothers, and all our kids call each other uncle and this, that, and the other, because we began to realize what we had. And so, although you had that rebellious moment, we all had those rebellious moments with our mothers at some point, some form, some fashion.
That's good.
But what's interesting, like you said, she called your pops at the time, but you also came to my grandparents' house, which there was a man there, that being my grandfather, and y'all know how Pawpaw is.
Yes,
And
that's
I can
good.
remember either your pops or your mother.
Willie!
Yeah.
Willie!
If y'all did, let's break. Let's take a tangent real quick. So everybody want to know who Reggie is, and who he was, is going to, whatever the case. One thing is for certain is that we knew Reggie as a clown who would joke, laugh, and some stuff that probably shouldn't be laughed at.
I talked about it on multiple episodes, man. Hey, I struggle with ADHD.
See, we didn't know that we was little.
And that's what I'm saying. They didn't have all of those diagnoses or whatever, but you could clearly see it in my behavior, in my actions, that I was struggling. I was always, I wasn't
man,
a
we
stupid
be in
little
class,
kid.
Man, he'd be like, well, God, just if somebody come in, we always copying stuff off movies. Well, God damn.
Hey, that's funny.
Yeah, so always but even with that though, so would you not say that he is mature into a man even when it comes to that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, his laugh will just piss you off alone. Once he starts laughing, that is it.
That's funny.
Yeah,
But no, he is definitely, he came a long way.
Yeah.
Long way.
Long way.
I'm talking about times where me and this nigga almost went blow to blow of stuff he done laughed about. I'm like, hey man, you can't be laughing. Like, come on, man. You know what I mean? But yeah, anyway, we kept each other honest. But I say that though, and the thing about true brotherhood too, that I would say that I appreciate with us too, and that we experienced very early on. When you go back to those neighborhoods, man, we grew up in the time where the neighborhood funk was just ridiculous. Folk were getting killed every week because of colors and because of what neighborhoods they were from. You know what I mean?
Right.
And you 32nd and Wayne,
Yeah.
68th. I represent about 2 or 3 different areas because my grandparents on 39th Street. My mother was in, still is on near Hillcrest out south, and then my father was in the 50s. He stayed on 52nd in Swope Park, and then 53rd. So we were in areas that where all this stuff was going on. But I'm thankful that we were forming something that was solid. That when we did begin to understand street politics and the stuff that was going on, that never came in between us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That never came in between us. And we continue to, rock strong as brothers beyond. And another thing, we were just a few degrees, all that our mothers, fathers, grandparents, and whatever, and as well as cross functionally between, different parents, that being your mother to us, my mother, you, your mother to us, all that was being poured into us, we were still just a few degrees removed from criminality.
Talk on it.
We were still just a few degrees removed from criminality, and certainly experienced some things that could have landed us in prison, no doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
Man, a part of this podcast, we talk about making permanent decisions on temporary emotions.
Mm.
And I'm sure, I mean, and I'm just allowing the Holy Spirit to kind of lead this conversation now. Even talking about some of these things that we talk about from the past, it's no reason or no stranger or no, there's a reason that I don't drink and I don't smoke. Because when you talk about these influences of the world, it says be not of the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. I think it's important to understand that influence is powerful. And then you'll hear people say things like, oh, I made a bad decision because I was drunk. Or you know what, I did so and so because I was high. But what about when you remove those additives to your life? When you remove marijuana, when you remove drinking, I'm telling you, the clarity that it provided me, just even with the mental fogness, and more importantly, just being able to hear God clearly.
Mm.
Even in this podcast, this was me stepping out on faith because I felt like God wanted to use my platform. I told God a long time ago that if he blessed me, just like he told Abraham, I bless you to be a blessing to other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so a part of this podcast is being able to talk about real conversations in hopes that the person listening can be able to maybe take a little part of that and be able to make it applicable to their lives. Yeah. So a big part of what we do is that this part is, and I'm gonna invite somebody to the table. A big part of this is being able to make sure that the message is reaching our youth. None of this stuff matters if we're not reaching the youth. I believe that education is the foundation for change. And then with that being said, when you're talking to a youth, although my perspective may be such, it means absolutely nothing when you talk about the art of communication if I'm the sender of a message and the receiver doesn't feel exactly what it was that I was trying to translate.
Yeah.
Right? And so...
Sorry, go ahead.
And so I wanted to bring your baby to the table.
Yeah, absolutely. Before
Okay.
you do that, though,
Yeah.
if something you said, and we talked about this not too long ago, that being certain changes, transformations that, and we've noticed them by one another over the years, but one particularly in you is, I would say, your experiences with certain trauma.
Mm.
You mentioned additives such as, marijuana, alcohol, this, that. At 100%, those are choices, additives that you make a choice to bring into your life. However, there are certain things that happen that you have no control over, but they still have a high impact on you, on your emotions, how you perceive life, and so forth. So I say that because when looking back, in the times that we experience a lot of things that we experience, even in our younger adulthood, I personally did not recognize a lot of things as trauma.
Mm.
I didn't even really understand trauma, to that degree. It was really in conversations with you and the things that you had seen and experienced. I just give you a simple example. You came into my house, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, and you saw the pull-up bar in between my, wherever I had it, in between the door frames. And you said, man, if you don't take that damn thing down, how you say, you was like, do you know how many people's homes I've had to respond to, excuse me, because of the risk of the, I'm saying all that to say, when you talk about removing certain additives from your life so that you can think soberly and so forth, in my opinion, one of the other things that is important for people to be able to process life or move and not move forward or move in a way where they're not being so impulsive,
That's good.
making bad decisions, is knowing how to address the trauma that they've dealt with.
Let me hit it
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
you
And
hit a
I'm
couple.
yeah,
So make sure hold me accountable to make sure that I hit this. Okay. So my mom passed away in 2018 from pancreatic cancer. I went into therapy in 2019. That whole year, I was off. But there's this thing that holds you bondage, which is for men is saying I need help. And so I finally succumbed to the fact that I was unrecognizable in 2019 because of the fact that I lost my best friend, which was my mother. Right. And so I went into treatment, and shout out to Valor, but for 6 weeks, no phone, no computer, no outside world. Right. And it was a moment for me to recalibrate myself to be able to understand why was I off. And what I realized is that not only had I experienced trauma from being a firefighter for the last 16 years, but shoot, man, I got a story when me and my brothers was playing baseball out in front of the projects, and we hear this noise. And at the time, you know what I mean? We didn't realize, but it was an AK going off. That, right? Interestingly enough, then my pops comes out and telling us to get down, diving toward. I mean, it was just a very traumatic experience because it was a guy that was running around about to get shot, and we out in the front being, yeah, that is very traumatic. As I believe I had to have been maybe 7, 8. You understand what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is that I got all of these moments where I'm putting these traumatic experiences in this box and then sealing it and putting it in a backpack, if you will. And then I'm carrying this bag. And many of us have heard things like my cup had runneth over, right? My mom passing was that cup for me, right? And so trauma is, I think it's need to be saying, I'm not a licensed therapist or counselor or none of that stuff. But I think I have a little bit of wisdom in this area. But trauma is unresolved issues that your brain just don't know how to process. And more importantly, I think it's important to say that trauma, you don't get to choose what's traumatic for you. And more importantly, who am I to tell you that shouldn't be traumatic for you? I pray that because of this brotherhood that we got, that when something is traumatic or when you are challenged with the trials and tribulations of life, that we have enough of a bond and a brotherhood that we can bring that stuff to the table and be able to dissect it in the most positive way as possible, right? But yes, so even with the trauma, I would say that that's even contributed to me even as a father, man. Because I would see these horrific things as a firefighter and then go home and my son would fall and I'll be like, that doesn't compare. I mean, I just seen some horrific things that I'm going to not even say. I don't want to get muted, right? But I've seen some horrific things at the fire station, and then I come home and see you fall. Man, get your butt up, man. And so I had to learn, being raised hard from my mom, right? being raised in this area where weakness was not welcomed, right? And then you get on a job where machoism is being circulated throughout the department. And so I think it's important to say for all the first responders, first off, if you speak up about anything that you're dealing with, whether it's trauma or whatever, then kudos to you, because I believe being the change in what you want to see is my mantra. I think it's important, and I think it's going to take all of us to be able to change not only the culture of the fire department, but the culture of the inner city. And so if y'all got it, I'm going to bring up Miss Gabby. My niece, come on up here, girl. And so Gabby's going to come up. Gabby is 17, and I'm bringing her up because she's going to have a youthful perspective. And I think it's important. Are we okay to bring that mic over there?
Yeah, I'm about to
Okay. All right, cool. How we doing on time?
I don't know what time.
What time do we start?
Okay. All right, so
15 minutes.
so we bringing Gabby to the table because again, I want to make sure that despite me highlighting who I am, why do I feel like God has blessed me with this platform to be able to deliver this message to you? Again, the point of, and I will say the art of communication is making sure that the message is catching hold to the receiver, which is our youth. I pray that you can hear something within the message, whether it's relating to my story or some of the guest story that you've seen on Let's Talk Shop KC. But I want to make sure that it's resonating with our youth, and what not a better way than organic conversation, in the sense that we didn't know you were going to talk today. But I want to know from your perspective, what is it that you heard? And then more importantly, what is it that you feel like you can take away from some of this conversation, if anything? 1 second. Think.
All right. So
Or say your name for the people.
my name is Gabby Evans, or Gabrielle, which is my real name. Listening to you guys talk about your backstories and everything like that, it really does help bring different types of awareness to kids my age or even older or younger about certain things that they may be going through, like the traumatic situations that you talked about. Definitely can agree with that. I've been through some myself. We won't really speak on that. But it definitely does hold a gigantic weight on your back that you carry through until you learn how to just let go.
So can I talk to you? Can I ask you can we dialogue a little bit?
Yeah,
Is that okay?
yeah.
I know as a father, being raised in a very, I'm raised from humble beginnings. A lot of us, we try to make sure that our kids never experience that. In some aspects, it may be good, where they maybe have this kind of entitlement, if you will. But then there's another aspects that I've coddled you so much to where when life happens, you don't know how to deal with it. And so you talked about knowing how to unpack your bag. Do you feel like your father, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, do you feel like your father, as a huge component of this podcast, is fatherhood? Fathers being present in the home for their children. Has your father been able to give you that, to be able to know what do you do with your trauma?
Yes, I will say yes, he has. Including my mother. Shout out to my mom. Love you.
Straight up.
They definitely help throughout my traumatic situations that I have dealt with. With my mom, just from the mental standpoint and emotionally how to get through it, but then my father on the biblical standpoint of how to get through, let go, and forgive, not only for yourself but for the other person.
Is that difficult being a preacher's kid? Straight up. Be honest. Come on, that raw.
It does have its challenges because people tend to put that title on me, oh, you're a preacher's daughter, when realistically, that's just a title that I personally do not hold on to. Yes, I am a preacher's daughter, but that's not my entire life. I am more than just that. I have a life outside of, him and his career and what he does. And so does he outside of being a preacher. So people definitely, they have their underlying expectations, but all in all, you just kind of have to push through, keep doing what you're doing.
That's good. Hey, let me just say that, man, what an amazing job that our brother is doing raising his daughter. I mean, to hear you so articulate, to hear you be able to carry yourself with poise as a young lady. Shout out to Ron for that, because I think it's important that men let their daughters know just how beautiful they are. Not only let them know how beautiful they are, but that you're worth every every part of you and making sure that any young man that steps forward to you shows you that they better treat you as good as your father, or if not better, right? And so shout out to you, Ron, for being able to be present in your daughter's life, right? But if my question or my thing to you, Gabby, would be, if you were to give other youth, and let me say this, I think it's a beautiful thing that Gabby, full round scholarship, going to college. We don't know which college yet, but I just think that's an amazing accomplishment. So I want to make sure that we give you your roses while you're here, right? But if you were to give the youth listening just a couple takeaways besides trauma, but just a couple takeaways from this podcast perspective, what would you say to them?
Well, one thing is always learn that there is two sides of a story. And to always learn to seek out and view the other perspective and not just your own. And another, no matter how terrible you may think your life is, value it, because whether it is bad and you're in like a terrible situation or a terrible household, you can take that and become more of it. You don't have to become, say your father was a drug addict. Like, you don't have to become a drug addict like your father. You can take that as an example and be a better one for not yourself, but for others, and if you do, your children.
Do you feel like because of your dad's a preacher that you have to be a preacher?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
Or your mom, she's an amazing artist that you have to do art?
No, that's just something that came naturally to me. It's just because I get the experience of art in both ways, musically and physical art. And it's just something I enjoy, not because my dad plays the saxophone or because my mom is an art teacher. It's just something that I like to do personally.
That's good. Hey, so you heard it real life, or real time, I should say, being able to see the product of when a father is present in his kid's life, what that looks like. To be able to have confidence, to be able to be exactly who you are unapologetically, I think is a beautiful thing, right? You know what I mean? So I pray that you share this podcast with your friends and everybody. You know what I mean? And it's not just let me make it clear, it's not just about the views, but it's about the reach. And with the reach comes being able to make sure that that you feel that if you're going through something specific, that you got other people that may be going through something very similar to what you've gone through. And I don't ever want you to feel like you're alone, right? And so that's the biggest thing. So, Gabby, thank you so much. Did you have anything else you want to say to people?
No?
You good?
Yeah.
All right, let's transition.
Good job, Gabby.
All right, so we coming up on the last few minutes or whatever.